What do you want me to say? You want me to close differently? I have a hard time closing.
I don't believe that for a second.
Peace out. Welcome back to the Reynolds Team podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Kaylan Keathley. Welcome. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you for having me.
And today we're going to talk all about, won't be very much real estate, but it kind of ties to high performance, and it's fitness and health and diet and all that good stuff.
Yes.
Kaylan, just to give you a little background, Kaylan and I have been working together for, we just completed 5 years going into the 6th year.
Yep.
And she's been my personal trainer and also really my health and fitness and diet mentor. I don't think I've ever told her that, but that's always been kind of her role in helping me with all of my changes. And so thank you so much, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. What an intro.
So let's go ahead and start a little bit about telling a little bit about yourself, because you're much more than just a personal trainer. You tie it all in. Yeah. So and I know you have a really nice certification as a master trainer. Mm-hmm. So what is that?
So a master trainer, essentially, I'm a certified personal trainer, have been for over 11 years, but a master trainer is when you acquire more than 5 additional certifications or specialties. Mm-hmm. So for an example, some of my specialties are health coach. I'm a specialist in genetics-based personal training and fitness. And I'm also a specialist in fitness nutrition. So that, coupled with my 7 certifications, are what is required for a master trainer certification.
Wow. Yeah. I like how it all ties in, because it's super important. Sure. You know, when I first signed on, I signed on to have a trainer for accountability.
Right. As most people do. I
wasn't as concerned about my diet or anything like that. And I kind of knew how to exercise, but I needed the accountability. Yeah. And so that was but then during our journey, I've bit off more than I thought I was getting. But, I got the whole program, which has been phenomenal.
Absolutely. So most people do walk into the gym, right? Because they want to get healthy. They want to change in their lifestyle. They want to change in their health. And they kind of do, it's almost backwards, because they walk into the gym and they want to start with fitness and they think that's where they should start. But there's a whole lot of back work that needs to happen in order for the effort that you put forward in the gym to give you any kind of return on that investment. So again, if you're not sleeping properly, if you're not getting enough nutrition, you're never going to see the results that you're putting in. And most people go in and work really hard in the gym, but we want to allow them to see that reap and of what they sowed, right? So that's where all that other information is so important.
Well, and truthfully, and then, I was doing it for the first year or 2, I think maybe, and it takes a while, even though the information's available and you show and teach it, for people like myself to start changing their life.
Sure.
To adhere. Yeah. Because I was working my backside off in the gym, but then, I wasn't seeing all the other results because of the behavior. I love you said when you said, I'm responsible for you 1 hour, but you got the other 23 hours.
Right. And that's a much harder job.
Yeah. So it's been, so we're, I can talk all day about all the benefits I've had. One thing before I go into that, now you work with, you work with all different ages. You you have a lot of older clients. Talk about the different kind of clients you work with.
Sure. So because of the nature of where we live in Vero Beach, Florida, one of the things that I saw almost instantaneously is, of course, the market. Right. And so that led me into one of the initial additional certifications that I actually received, was called Corrective Exercise Therapy. So Corrective Exercise Therapy is literally post or pre-surgery post PT. So I do work with a lot of clients who are either preparing for surgery, recovering from surgery, or dealing with chronic issues. So scoliosis, stenosis, MS, so a bunch of the things that maybe other trainers are a little scared to touch because they don't have that extended knowledge of. And there's such a need for it here where we live. And it really did drive my business in that direction for, I would say, the good first 6 years of my business, because that was really the mainstay of the population.
Right.
That, of course, has changed, but you still have, corrective exercise therapy is used to rehab Olympic athletes.
Right.
It's the same theory.
Yeah.
Or to, let's say, keep a pitcher being able to pitch for longer in their career.
Right.
It's the same theory in exercise therapy as we would use for somebody recovering from a shoulder surgery.
Well, I've just, I didn't know, I assumed that everybody were like young and, middle-aged and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds that were training. And then, it was interesting to learn that actually, it's a minority.
It is. It really is. And it's, I think it's actually one of the populations that feels like they know what they're doing more than they do. Right? So the older population didn't grow up with it being normal to go to a gym.
Right.
So they're very honest about the fact that they have no idea what they're doing and don't feel comfortable and want some guidance. And then you have children who are growing up with coaches and coaches telling them, because we know now, if we cross train, how much stronger an athlete's going to be. And so the knowledge base is there. So we do have this middle ground of people who are a little bit more familiar, a little bit more comfortable with going in the gym, but almost just knowing enough to be dangerous.
Right. Well, I can rattle off tens of things that I have learned that were, in my head the wrong way. And, from water intake to stretching and being flexible, the value of being flexible, to then you see some of the older, demographic, including like something like my posture wasn't the best. And it's still something that we're working on.
Sure.
But that is usually, I never understood how, like we've talked about before, like you see some of the people where they're leaned over, when they're walking, and that is something to do with tightness in their legs.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have this posture that's created by sitting in a chair, and it's interesting because in other countries where they don't sit in chairs for an extended period of time, they don't have the chronic back issues that we have in countries where we sit in a chair. And we're doing it all day long. We're sitting in a chair at work. We're sitting in that same position in a car. You're sitting in that same position when you watch TV. And the whole time you're in that position, your hamstrings, the back of your legs are contracted.
Yeah.
And when you go to stand up, that feeling, we've all kind of been there where we're super stiff. We go to stand up and we almost can't stand up.
Yeah.
That's that old man shuffle. That's that bent over, super tight hamstrings, pulling on your back, can't straighten your legs, creating that shuffle step kind of walk.
Yeah.
And it is a huge issue. Yep. And it isn't specific to age because we have more and more people spending more and more hours of their life in that seated position on a computer, on their phone, And
it creating lower back, I also didn't correlate the lower back pain with tightness in the glutes and the hamstring.
Yeah.
But as soon as I started stretching my legs, then my lower back pain started going away.
Yeah.
Where I thought it was maybe the lower back. So.
Right, exactly. And maybe a spinal issue or something that we can actually resolve with just a slight change in muscular development.
Yeah. So where do we train every day?
Sure. So we actually work locally here in Vero Beach, Florida, and we are at Vero Fitness. So locally, I do work with clients one-on-one in Vero Beach, Florida at Vero Fitness. And then I also have a virtual aspect as well. So I do my health coaching online so that I can help people anywhere and everywhere.
Right. That's nice.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things that we did, and we'll talk about, ID Life, which is a program that you use for your nutrition. But ID Life had the DNA report where we took my DNA and was able to see how my, based on my DNA, what kind of nutrients I needed, but also what kind of exercises, and also it kind of just draws out like more about my body type and my inner workings.
Exactly. And so we call this lifestyle DNA. Okay. So one thing that's really important to understand is there's 3 main lanes, if you will, for DNA right now. So we have ancestry DNA, which pretty much everyone is familiar with. We have preventative med, which countries are literally fighting over the legalities of this right now. It could be phenomenal in many ways for us, but it's not accessible to the public right now. It's still being really fought over. So preventative med essentially could be able to maybe tell us whether you would have, or your child might be able to have some medical issue in the future, right? Okay. And maybe what we could do about it. Not really on the market now, but the science is there. So we're kind of fighting over that. Lifestyle DNA is in a lane of its own. And so it's only looking at a section of your DNA that's telling us how your body is basically responding to the environment that it's in, right? And the needs that it has. And so lifestyle DNA is legislated differently than ancestry DNA. So a lot of people know that ancestry DNA, once you do your DNA test, they keep your DNA on file and you're kind of giving it to them. Lifestyle DNA is completely different. So when you do your lifestyle DNA testing, it has to be destroyed. So it's legislated that way. It's also HIPAA regulated, which means just like any blood work test or anything that you get from your doctor, no one but you or somebody like your doctor that you hand it over to can ever see it. So it's very private. And then all that information is destroyed after you do the test. When we're looking at this section of your DNA, it helps us to streamline your plan because we're no longer having to wonder, like, is a boot camp style training appropriate for me?
Group exercising.
Is keto appropriate for me? Right. We no longer have to guess. This is literally your playbook, right? So then what we do is we take the information from here and we just run the play. Right. And what's so cool about this is, like, for so many years as a trainer, a client would come in and they'd have their goals and we'd have this long intake, which we still do. We talk about if you have any injuries or anything like that. But in that intake, we're trying to dig out from you what your past experiences have been so we can take that as an educated guess. And say, okay, well, let's try this for your fitness, this for your diet, this for your plan. The problem with that is, or the frustration level lies in the fact that then a client has to give us at least 3 to 6 months of being 100% on point with the plan for us to even see if it works.
To see.
And it's frustrating. And most people get frustrated before they see results. Right. Or they see substantial results. And so in order to get somebody to buy in for the 6 months to a year that it's actually going to take to get that traction going to see results and to do all the troubleshooting needed in the meantime, that's a hard buy-in. And it can be very frustrating for the client and extremely frustrating for the trainer because then you have this.
They're not happy.
Well, are you actually doing the diet? And you have, all this kind of back and forth. With this, there's no guessing. So we either are running the play, we aren't running the play, or we're missing a component, but it's all in here. So we go back to the drawing board.
I mean, this is 40 something pages about some of it specifically about my DNA, and then some of it's about just all the components in the report. And so I really love the report from ID Life. It's the reason that I started working with the company, and I do use their tools implemented into my training regimen because when I got the certification, I was actually the first trainer in Florida to get the certification for DNA-based training. And it's a newer science. And they're quite honestly, I wasn't happy with the other DNA testing out there because of the report. Like, I would geek out on it because I love the science part of it, right? Wow. It's my interest. But when I would turn that over to a client, they would not be able to read it and they'd like stick it in a drawer somewhere and not do anything with it. Well, this has pretty pictures.
Right?
And explanations.
It has graphs. It's color coded. I love color coding. It's easy to use and it's not intimidating. Right? So as a client standpoint, how did you feel when you got that, when you saw it? I mean,
I loved it. I was very interested to learn more about, because you have what's in your head and then you're seeing it. But it also made some things make sense.
Yeah.
Like always, it says in here where I always want to eat. And I have the, I can always eat. And then obesity I'm at high risk for obesity and for rebound. And it kind of, explains that.
Right.
And so you can learn how to cope with that.
Exactly. And I think the biggest key for that section, I call that physiology and psychology section of the report, is that I have literally had clients look at me and go, oh my gosh, I thought I broke myself in college.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I damaged myself. And not understanding that it's nothing that you did wrong. It's not your fault. It's, there's nothing innately wrong with it. Every single one of these genetic makeups was created for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. So you and I share this. It's actually the FTO gene, which is our amazing ability to gain and store body fat. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But this came from we would be the people that would survive the ice age.
And we live in Florida.
We do, but it doesn't help us at all today. But but there's a reason for each and every one of these. So even if we look at that and we're like, well, that, that's really not cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In a way, it really is. And so understanding that each one of these has a reason.
Depending on your environment.
And then just, okay, well, now I have to tweak my environment. I have to tweak how I treat my body and what, the same satiation with that appetite. I have to make sure I plan ahead. I have to make sure that I get my portion size and then push the plate away.
Yeah.
Go walk away, get out of the space, right? You can learn to navigate your natural, because
we can go somewhere and have food out, and I just talk and eat and talk. And Janice, sometimes it turns aren't you full? I'm like, no, I'm just
I've never had
busy.
That feeling.
Yeah, no, that's, and then I also, another one that jumped out at me, which also makes sense, is my inflammation. I have high risk of, sensitivity to inflammation.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And that's the marker. So that's one of 7 that's actually in the section of our report that looks over what your potential need factor is for vitamins and nutrients. And the reason that's there is because we can actually significantly change that response to inflammation just based on what our omega intake is in our diet. Right. So if we're looking at this and we're looking at our vitamin and nutrient needs, we can set ourselves up for success by preloading the things that are already massively required in our body so that we can then just focus on our macronutrients, our proteins, fats, and carbohydrates as far as our diet's concerned. Because it's super hard, especially in this day and age, it's next to impossible unless you have all the money in the world and a private chef to eat in order to gain all your vitamins and nutrients.
Right.
It's not possible in today's day and age and our food source. So if we can preload that and know that that's there, we can then just worry about, okay, well, how do I fuel my body on a daily basis within that 24-hour mark with our macronutrients?
And then this can also help tell what kind of vitamin supplements do you need rather than just guessing which ones. I hear, okay, we need more vitamin D or vitamin C, or then you're able to see on your DNA, you're naturally lower based on your DNA.
Exactly. And so this is one of the components this actually is the component that makes ID Life so different and so special, because it's the only company on the market that has a health assessment, which is basically just a questionnaire that you go in and you answer, okay, so there's some variables in your life, like where do you live? Right. Then there's some non-variables in your life. Do you have any family health history of macular degeneration? You do, you don't, or you don't know, right? And then there's these components from your DNA. So we take the DNA report, we take all these questions from the questionnaire, and it actually has the only algorithm in the world that takes those questions and compiles them against all of the independent research studies out there about these nutrients. And what that means is we have over 150 years of experience of science behind the suggestions of what you should take on a daily basis. So there's not any one person telling you this is what you should take. You're not walking into a store with somebody with a high school degree who's trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're literally getting clear information on not just what you need, but when you need to take it. Morning, night, so on and so forth.
And it's been good for me to, like, I get my blood work done about every 6 months, every 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of neat. I can see the things improving over time, whether it's cholesterol, or I see where, maybe my vitamin D was lower and then now it's increasing. And so you can head off some things too.
Exactly. And I love the fact that you brought up blood work, because this is something I always like to point out to people, the difference, right? Because sometimes we have a kind of disconnect between, what does DNA tell us? You're talking about, vitamin deficiency. What does DNA tell us versus your blood work? And the way I explain it is like this. Your DNA is your blueprint, mm-hmm. right? It's how your house was built, mm-hmm. right? But there's lots of things you can't tell from the blueprint. You can't tell what color your walls are painted from the blueprint.
Right. Okay.
And it's a finite thing. You can change the color of your walls. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's blood work.
Right.
Blood work can literally change in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a very, what is it right now kind of thing. And so those two things are really important to have. Like mm-hmm. you need to do both. Right. But you need to understand what's what. We need to understand how the house is built. We need to understand where those supporting walls are. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of concrete information we need to understand. That's your DNA. And then we need to understand, how is it running right now? What does it look like right now? Is there a wall that needs to be patched? Is there some work that needs to be done? That's your blood work.
Right. Okay.
So those two components are great when you have them side by side. And then you have the whole picture.
And I've obviously shared my blood work as we're going and
mm-hmm.
with you. And then another measuring that we do is, currently we're using InBody, basically monthly or, every so often, just checking weight and the ratio of body fat and muscle.
Yeah. And that's a great feature that we have at Vero Fitness. When you're in a training program, mm-hmm. once a month, we do an InBody scan for free. And that InBody scan, it's a wonderful way to give you that real visual idea of how you're changing your body. What's going on. Because
a standard thing that I've, picked up from you is, everyone is, some people, a lot of people, it's very common of racing. I call it racing the scale. Yeah. So they're just trying to get the pounds off, which some people, there is something to that, getting the pounds off.
Sure.
But which pounds are you getting off?
That's it.
So
that's
and where I've had some measurements where maybe my weight stayed the same, but those ratios changed. I lost fat and gained some muscle.
Yeah. And especially the closer to your goal line that you get, like mm-hmm. that kind of healthy body weight where you want to be, understanding, pound for pound, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
A pound of body fat versus a pound of muscle is a big difference on your body.
Right.
And of course, not only if you have 100 pounds to lose, not only is that first 50 pounds a lot easier to lose,
right,
but also the majority of it is probably body fat.
Yeah.
Right. And so
you're okay.
The concern is not really there. However, even if we're looking at it from that perspective, if you're doing it more like a quick weight loss journey, mm-hmm. that can be the health issue involved with that, because we can have a very unhealthy flip into what we call skinny fat.
Yeah,
right?
So that's funny, a term that I've never heard of, skinny fat, and it's where describe what is skinny fat.
So skinny fat is essentially you can be very thin, mm-hmm. right? And not have enough muscle tone to be healthy. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, for example, years ago, I had a client. She was 65 years old. She was 6'2". I mean, she's a tall woman. Yeah. Right. And very thin. She was probably a size 3. I mean, extremely thin. Right. However, she wasn't happy with her body tone. Yeah. Right. She felt like things were really loose. She felt like things were kind of jiggly. Mm-hmm. Right. And so she wasn't happy with her tone. And so when we get clients that come in and they complain about, I want to tone up. Okay. So this is a big keyword. I want to tone up. She also couldn't even step up onto a step. She didn't have the strength to like climb stairs.
Yeah.
Because she had such little muscle in her legs that she couldn't lift her body weight as it was.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And so we understand that when we add muscle into your body, not only does it raise your metabolic rate, not only does it help hormones and the balance that occurs within your chemical body, but it also is literally how you can physically mobilize your body.
Right.
Your muscle is what moves your body, right? And so you could be too skinny and too weak to be able to mobilize your body properly. And so the two things she wanted to do was tone up and also to be able to be strong enough to get down on the floor with her grandkids and get back up, which she could not do, right? And one of the big conversations that we had to have was, you're going to have to add weight. Pounds.
Right.
Right. And so now we have to get over that psychology. Of adding weight because what she actually needed was weight.
Right.
You know, she needed muscle. But then we go into, there's this falsehood out there that says, well, muscle weighs more than fat. Okay. And so we're going to go back to school for a minute, and weight is weight. A pound is a pound, regardless of what it is.
Right.
So
it may be a different size.
Exactly. So how I explain it is, if you have two scales and you have two garbage bags, but one is full of a garbage bag full of feathers, and the other one is a garbage bag full of rocks, but the scale both read 10 pounds. The scale with the rocks in it is probably going to look like it maybe doesn't have anything in it, right? The one with feathers is going to be giant.
Yeah.
And almost can't close it. Okay. That's body fat, is the feathers.
Right. Okay.
Rocks is the fat. They both weigh 10 pounds, but it's going to look and feel much smaller and tighter and firmer, more tone on the body than body fat will.
So that person could still stay in their dress size and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, actually for her, a lot of her clothes were looser. Yeah, they fit better.
More tone.
Because she was toned now. She had muscle instead of body fat. Yeah.
So kind of sliding a little bit more into the fitness side. I know something that, you know, using me as an example, I did not have much back, like my back wasn't developed at all, and which hurt my posture. I couldn't do half the exercises. My chest was okay because that was easy to do, but I kind of skipped the whole back, I didn't know what I was doing with the back.
Right.
And so with helping balance people out a little bit, and then kind of lead into flexibility and how, I remember you talked about muscle needs water, flexibility, and then torn, right?
I mean, to build. Yeah, sure. And so when we're looking at that, everyone has imbalances. I mean, we'd love to think that we're all symmetrical, and we are not. But the goal is obviously symmetry. So we do work with that, and we do start to look at, how is your body moving? What do your body mechanics look like? Where is your asymmetry? And then start targeting that. And for a lot of people, it is the same as you. For a lot of people, their front of their body is way more developed, or tends to be overdeveloped in comparison to the posterior chain or the back of the body. Again, we go back to sitting in the chair. We're not utilizing it. Right. And so therefore, we're not building it. Most of us are not rock climbers, especially if we're here in Florida. We don't climb trees anymore. We're not using our back as a major mover. But it's designed to be a major mover.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do in the gym, is we teach you how to activate it as a major mover. And because it's literally the second largest muscle group in the body, it's really important.
Right.
You know, and so we start then building this huge muscle group in the body. And by way of doing that, you're actually burning calories, you're balancing your body, increasing your ratios of muscle. And so all of those things are hugely beneficial. And then you have this symmetry, come out in your body that you need. And to your point on, flexibility, I was just teaching a client today. Everyone thinks of strength and flexibility as opposing, or maybe at the very least, like two sides of the same coin, and they're not. They're really intertwined. And so I always like to point out, if you close your eyes and you think of a really fit person, right, with great muscle tone, most people think of like a bodybuilder. Okay. And most people are like going, I want to look like that all the time. Okay, well, first of all, they don't look like that all the time. It's not healthy.
Right.
They're the closest to walking rigor mortis you can be.
Right.
So that's not the goal. But you want to think about a baby. So innately, babies are super strong. They can grab onto something and pull their whole body weight up, right? And they're really strong. And you can feel their little muscle engaged. But the minute that they relax, their muscle is as soft as your cheek, right? It's very pliable.
Okay.
It's hydrated.
Okay.
It's flexible. It's healthy.
Okay. I never thought
so that is actually, that's kind of the goal. The goal is not to be strong like a bodybuilder. The goal is to be strong and have muscle like a baby, because that's really where your strength is. And so when we go back to looking at just muscle tone, and we talk about the need to be flexible, the need to be hydrated, so that's both water and electrolytes, we're looking at it and we're going, okay, what does a muscle do? A muscle contracts, we all know that, but the tear happens in the extension of that muscle fiber, right? And so if you look at it from the standpoint of a rubber band, if a rubber band is dry rotted, when you go to pull it apart, it's going to break.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. It's not pliable.
So that's where the injuries.
That's where the injuries occur. So we need it to be pliable. We need it to be well hydrated. We need that electrolyte in there so that it can fire off properly and work properly. And that is just like your regular healthy rubber band, right? Where you can pull it apart and it springs right back together where it should be. That's ultimately what we're looking for. And so those two things need to be married together, the flexibility and the strength, not necessarily opposing to each other.
Well, it's my nemesis. I really struggle. There's certain parts I'm good with stretching, but other ones are, legs and hips and are a little bit more challenge for me. But stretching chest and arms and stuff like that is pretty good. So, but when I do concentrate on my legs, oh my God, how much better everything feels.
Everything feels. And that's another key point on our DNA. Right. So the couple of things that we're looking at there, when we're in like page 11 through 13 is we're looking at your risk of injury. We can actually tell that from your DNA. We're looking at your rate of recovery. How quickly do you recover?
Yeah, my recovery is so. Exactly. So I need a little more recovery.
So that was a big thing for us to change for you, is to focus on, okay, we actually need to add this in. And so I don't know if you remember me literally telling you to stop running and start stretching.
Right. Yeah.
That was a big thing for us.
Yeah. So I would train 4 to 5 days, 5 days in the gym, and then I would run the bridge, and I wasn't getting the recovery in. And actually got a couple times calf injury. Yep,
exactly. That Achilles tendon issue. Yeah.
And just thinking more is more.
Yep, exactly. And for you, we really, again, this is what we do for everybody. We map out what is your perfect, right? And your perfect thing. Everybody needs balance, but what does your perfect look like? So for some people, for your DNA, that's where we get the 5 days a week from.
Right.
Because you're really efficient at losing body fat with exercise specifically.
Right.
But you need that rest and recovery. And so those 2 days are absolute rest for you, focusing on that recovery.
When we first got started, one of the things that was eye-opening is you gave me, you've been telling me what to eat, but then you said, you know what, well, why don't you introduced me to the app Fat Secret. There's tons of, apps out there. And you're like, just put in what you're actually eating. Yeah. And most importantly, everything you're consuming, just put it in there. Don't judge yourself. Just put it in there. And that gave me a visual, because I'm kind of changing gears a little bit and going, I had the misconception that like I had a misconception of a lot of things. My breakfast was a kind of a wreck, but the one thing that I didn't think of was, on alcohol, that I just thought I just drank a few drinks on the weekend, and during the week I don't drink at all. But when I started being honest and like how much, an ounce is one drink, right, and actually counted, but didn't change my habits, didn't change anything. And it's going to sound like a lot, but I was having like 13 or 14 drinks.
You're honest about it, yeah.
From maybe a glass of wine on Thursday, but then Friday, maybe 2 or 3 of Scott's drinks, and Saturday, and then Sunday, maybe a drink or 2. And then you just add it up. And especially the ones when you're doing at home, you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one is sometimes a 50-50 pour. And so it just started really, really adding up. And then, but that was eye-opening of how, and then you start putting that over a month, and then how it all turns to sugar.
Exactly. And it really adds up. And I do love doing it that way. And that's something I encourage people to do at any point in time. Like, I love starting people with that. Give me 2 weeks of just, I call it the bite, lick, taste list. Like, if you bite it, lick it, or taste it, write it down. Zero judgment from yourself or me. But we just need to get honest. And see. And the other thing that we're getting honest about is how much water are you drinking? Because I hear every time, like every day, I drink so much water. Well, tell me what so much is. I need a number. So we have to be honest about what those numbers are, whether it's alcohol or it's candy or it's water. Like, we have to know what the baseline is. Then, I mean, I guarantee you anybody could start to write that down, give themselves a 2-week list, and start to make good, healthy changes just by seeing it written down.
Yeah, no, it was very visible, and it took, if you know, wanting to be honest with yourself. I think that's the first, you kind of have to submit and just say, I've tried it this way for however many years. I'm going to try it this way and just see. And it got rid of a lot of things that was in my head that I was telling myself, because we're all a great salesperson to ourselves. We are the best salesperson to ourselves. And so I was totally convinced I was just having a couple drinks on the weekend. And I was totally convinced I'd have 3 meals, and that was fine. And but I wasn't counting, you know, the you know, everything, all the creamer, you know, cutting. I mean, this probably won't be for everybody, but my coffee was really creamer with coffee in it. With
little coffee flavor.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a product that you have that's basically, I do like caffeine, but I hated I made the coffee taste really good. And then, you know, so these drinks I have the caffeine, but I don't have all the creamer and everything else in it. So cutting that out really, especially with my sensitivity to carbohydrates.
Exactly.
It really made a big difference.
Yeah. And that's the other thing we can look at when we're going through your DNA is your sensitivity to fat, your sensitivity to caffeine. If you're lactose intolerant, you know, if you're caffeine sensitive, right? And then we can start to talk, because we do have tools that can help us. And so the thing that I look for is, I'm the kind of person, I want a lot of bang for my buck. Right. And so I get up at 4:00 in the morning. I need an energy source. Particularly, I've always disliked coffee, so that was never a thing. But I am looking for more than caffeine, right? I want the biggest bang for the buck. So I want none of the bad stuff. I don't want to be consuming anything that's a negative, especially first in the morning, right? And then I want to make sure that I'm not just giving myself caffeine. I want brain food. I want things that are helping my cognitive health. I want things that are helping my VO2 max, which is my cardiovascular health. I want things that are actually helping me to have energy in my body and in my brain throughout my day. And that's the kind of tools that we're implementing here. Is like, it's not just about the things you take out. It's also about the things you can add in that literally help you level up. Yeah.
No, like I said, it's been very helpful, and that's why I wanted to like kind of share. And so we're gonna one other part I want to touch on is the one-on-one coaching that you do. How does that work?
Sure. So one of the things that I wanted to do is be able to reach people anywhere and everywhere. Not everyone obviously lives in Vero Beach, Florida, and something wonderful happened with COVID is this whole world of people being really open to even just using your phone to meet up, have coaching events, do things together, was really now accessible to a lot of people, right? And so I just kind of jumped on that bandwagon because I want to be able to offer this to people. And so I have a website that you can go to, INSPIREDLIFEWORKS.com. We can make an appointment. We start typically with a discovery call. And then I have different avenues. So I have group courses that are offered monthly, different dates and times for those. That gives a nice little community and a little bit of accountability, right? Because you have other people actually buying for you and bringing you into this kind of community. It's nice. It's a month long, so the buy-in's really small, and you get a lot of benefit from it. And then I have my one-on-ones, which are way more personal because we can, right? We really dive into your DNA and we dive into your path and program. We talk about every month what we're going to do because it's a progressive program, because you can't just change everything at once. No. I mean, we've been working together for 6 years, and there are some people when you don't understand how this works, you're like, well, what are you still doing 6 years? Yeah, you know, we're still learning, right?
So sometimes my wife has, we give each other a hard time, and she's like, "Don't you know how to work out by now?" and like, yeah, but it's the going back to it's the accountability. It's also the new, adjusting everything, because sometimes we're lighter, sometimes we're heavier, sometimes we're doing more, cardio, not cardio, but cross training type stuff. And some of it's just heavy on certain weeks or months.
Because you're still progressing. Yeah. And that's the idea, right? And so with that, I do monthly plans and then biannual plans so that people can really buy in, right? And give themselves the time that it's actually going to take to achieve those goals that they want. Because, I always like to point out to people, if you're not where you want to be in your body right now, I can guarantee you it took you more than 6 months to get there.
Right.
So it's going to take you longer than 6 months to get where you want to go.
Correct.
And that's just the name of the game. Like,
I remember one like closing thought. I remember when you asked, like, what's your goal? Or I was just sharing with you my long-term goal. And it's nothing about, being super muscular or super anyway. I have a visual of being 100 years old and being able to be on an airplane and put my 20-pound bag above my head. Yep. Because and so that's just, there's a lot tucked into that, but it's like having the ability to travel, travel's big to me, having the, not having to have assistance to get on and off the plane, having the ability to actually put my own bag above my own head.
The independence.
Yeah. So that's in order to do that, you have to, maintain your flexibility, maintain your, your muscle, maintain your overall health.
And as goals go, I love that. And I do share your goal with lots of people because I love that goal. Because like you said, there's so much tied into that. But the number one thing is it's emotional for you. Right. And so I think when people are setting these goals, we're great about setting short-term goals. Right. The long-term goals are harder, because we tend to give long-term goals less of an emotional attachment. Right. If it happens, it happens. It's kind of like, right? And that's what you need. When you're buying into that long-term goal, it has to be something that it moves you emotionally to keep going when motivation leaves you, because motivation will never get you to your goal. No. It's the dedication that's going to get you there. And you need that draw of that emotional connection to your long-term goal to keep you there. So I love that goal. I share it all the time.
Well, thank you so much for joining. We're going to have all of Kaylan's information below. There'll be links and all of our contact for our website and everything. So I really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
Yeah. So stay tuned to the next podcast. You won't want to miss it.